Hello, and welcome back to the Scary Stories channel. Tonight's story is about the nightmares that can come with a new home purchase. Saddle up, because this is going to be a rough ride. Now, without further ado, let's begin. I recently moved into this new house. Very simple, very quaint. 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and a very open kitchen/living room. It was everything I could have wanted in a first home, and the price tag just topped it all off. I was a little suspicious as to why it was so cheap, but the owners who sold it to me were in their mid-50s and ready to retire early. They planned to move away to be with their daughter and her children. They were eager to get their house sold before they moved. When I showed up to view the home, they rushed me inside, seemingly in a hurry to get the showing over with. They showed me around and were about to see me off when I requested to view the guest room, which they neglected to show me. Upon my request, they looked at me as if I had asked to have one of their kidneys. They walked towards the closed door to the guest room, and I followed. This was the slowest I had seen them move since I met them. They hesitantly opened the door, and I was hit with a smell of stale air and something else I couldn't quite put my finger on. The smell reminded me of old raw meat. Not quite spoiled, but certainly not fresh. The smell was like the butcher room of the supermarket I used to work at. I must have scrunched my face up without realizing, because the lady looked at me as if I had offended her. "We were hoping that you wouldn't notice that smell. The woods behind the house are often used for hunting. What you're smelling, well, it's just bits and pieces of game that hunters leave behind. It only gets really strong when the wind blows this way." Her husband put his arm around her and without hesitation added, "If you keep this door closed, then you don't smell it in the rest of the house. The kitchen window seals better than this one and keeps the smell out, thankfully." They both smiled at me, confidently assuring me that once the hotter months of hunting season ended, the room would be perfectly fine. After weighing this information with my other options, I still decided to purchase the home. For the price I was getting it for, I could deal with the smell for at least part of the year. I made a plan to replace the seal around the guest room window as soon as I could afford it. As I left the house through the front door, I decided to wander around and get a good view of the outside. As I wandered closer to the woods, near the back of the house, I was hit with the same smell. For the price of the house, the smell would be bearable. A few weeks later, the couple were gone, and I had moved into the home. Shortly after that, my best friend Jerry decided to move in with me. My house was closer to his school than Jerry's parents' house, and since he didn't have a car, this made his life easier. Thankfully, Jerry is the kind of guy that can fall asleep anywhere, and didn't mind crashing on the couch to avoid the smell in the guest room. Jerry was a film studies major and was working on his final project while staying with me. During the days while I was at work, he would sleep until just before I got home. Then he would spend his nights editing until I got up to go to work. Jerry and I had completely opposite schedules, but having him there made the house feel less lonely. Because Jerry slept in the living room, he spent all of his time in one room with a TV. And since I didn't want to pay for an expensive cable package, he spent many days letting the news play on the TV while he slept. I got a text from him while I was at work one day. Jerry usually texts me during the day when he woke up to eat or use the bathroom. I had planned to ignore it until lunchtime. I was new at this job, and I didn't want to be caught using my phone at my desk while still in my trial period. Jerry kept texting and my phone kept lighting up, so I rushed off to the bathroom to check it. "Hey Lex, hope you're having a good day. Where did you put the extra toilet paper?" "Seriously, Lex, I need that teepee." "Never mind, I found it." "Lex, I'm meeting you when you get off work. Do not walk home without me." That last text sent chills down my spine. I always walked home alone. My office was only a 15-minute walk from my house, and we lived in what I thought was a safe part of town. "Jer, what's going on? You're scaring me. Jerry, answer me, please." "Lex, there's some weird crap going down on the news. Remember that girl that went missing like a month ago? Well, they found new evidence that she was last seen in this area. Also, another girl who was from this area went missing about 2 weeks ago and hasn't been seen since. I'm not letting you walk home alone." I was going to protest. It was only a short walk. I knew I would be fine. Besides, he hadn't said that the two missing women cases were connected. Jerry was stubborn, though, and I honestly wouldn't hate having some company on my walk. I went back to work, trying to shake the weird feeling that I had, but it was way too hard. Once lunchtime rolled around, I pulled up the local news page on my computer to read more on the case. From what I could see, the cops had no suspects, and they had no way to connect the two cases. People were brushing it off as two separate runaway cases, but I still couldn't shake the uneasy feeling I had. Once 5 rolled around, I checked my phone. Just one message from Jerry to let me know he was waiting on a bench across the street from my office building. I hurried out to meet him, and we began the walk home. It was a beautiful, late fall evening, chilly, but still in calm. Since it was Friday, we decided to order a pizza for supper and spend the night watching movies. Jerry was excited to show me how his film was coming along so far. We walked home and carried on some BS conversation, arguing about which of our favorite horror movie villains would win in a fight. We got home and ordered our pizza. Jerry was too hungry to wait and threw a frozen burrito in the toaster oven while I dug out the DVD player. Jerry being Jerry, he didn't pay attention to his burrito, and before he knew it, the oven began smoking. He threw the burrito in the sink, opened the kitchen window, and complained about being hungry until the pizza guy arrived. We got our pizza and settled away on the couch. Jerry was about to turn on a movie when all my worries from today came flooding back. Jer, can we flick on the news first? I want to see if there are any updates on those girls. Jerry gave me a look that said, "Are you sure it won't freak you out?" I nodded my head and he hesitantly turned on the news. Expect the chilly temperatures to continue into the weekend and change with a severe cold front later next week. That's all for weather. Back to you, Heather. Thank you, Lance. Now back to our main story of the evening, the missing persons case of Lacey Wells and Claudia Spencer. After evidence has surfaced that both women were last seen in the same town, police have been working diligently to find any other possible connections. With permissions from the police, we are releasing the last seen picture of Lacey to the public. What you are about to see is security footage that shows Miss Wells walking through a Walmart parking lot weeks after she was reported missing from her home. The young woman has been missing for approximately a month now, and the security video appears to be about 3 weeks old. It was not brought to light until the disappearance of Miss Spencer. The police have no leads on Spencer's case and would like for anyone with any information about either girl to please come forward and call the TIPS hotline. Why wouldn't the police release the image sooner? I shot a puzzled look at Jerry. Because the police in this town are lazy. They're too lazy to do their jobs. He shook his head and then pointed to the TV screen as a grainy black and white image and what one could only imagine was Lacey Wells flashed across it. It can't be. No. No way, I stammered underneath my breath. What are you talking about? Jerry shot a puzzled look at me this time. I pointed at the screen. See in the background? There's an older couple following way too close behind her. I think they were the people who sold me this house. As soon as the words were out of my mouth, I realized how crazy I sounded. You could barely even pick out the faces of the people behind her. Lex, don't be silly. Even if that was the people who sold you this house, it doesn't mean anything. Everyone goes to Walmart. Besides, they are gone, and I'm here, and you're safe. Jerry patted my shoulder before getting up and making his way to the fridge for a beer. Hey Lex, do you smell that? Oh my God, Jerry, if you farted, I swear to God. No, just smell. I don't smell anything. That's my point. The smoke is gone, but the window is still open. You said that the whole woods smelled, and the only reason the kitchen didn't was because the window was sealed up good. Well, the window is open now, and I don't smell any rotting animal. That's weird. I mean, it makes sense that the smell would be gone with the cold weather and all. But when I was in the guest room to get the DVD player out of a box, it still stunk. My gaze met Jerry's, and we both knew what the other was thinking. I jumped from the couch, and he slammed down his beer as we dashed for the guest room. Jerry, in a fit of panic, ran full force into the guest room door. The door flew open, and we were met with that familiar stench we tried so hard to avoid. What do you think it is? Jerry pulled the end of his t-shirt up to cover his nose. If I had to guess, rotting flesh, just like during hot days in summer hunting season. I turned to him and I could tell that he was now feeling the same uneasy feeling I had been feeling all day. We both collected ourselves and then glanced around the room. Aside from the few boxes I was storing there, the room remained untouched. The previous owners had left everything as it was when I viewed the place. Bed, closet, bedside table, everything. This is just too weird, Lex. Too weird. Jerry was wiping tears away from under his glasses. This smell was really getting to him. With those words and the look of suspicion in his eyes, I could feel the blood rush to my face. That was them in the video. That was definitely them. Crap, Jerry, that was them. That's why they were in such a rush to leave. We need to call the police, like the lady on the news said. It was taking everything in me not to have a full-blown panic attack. Each deep breath sent the stench of whatever the hell we were smelling deeper into my lungs. Lex, I'm sure it's not that. They were old, right? They probably left meat in here or something. Maybe that's why they were in such a rush to leave. They were losing their minds and had to go live with their daughter so that she could take care of them. Just calm down. We will find the meat and then go back to watching movies and everything will be fine. Jerry adjusted his glasses and his shirt and shrugged off any sign that he was freaking out as well. I nodded and we both looked around the room. Jerry opened the closet and found a blue cooler, one of those ridiculously big ones that families of 5 take for a weekend camping trip. That is all it is. They went camping or picnicking or hunting or something and forgot to clean out the cooler before putting it away. Jerry knelt by the cooler and I joined him. We both looked at each other, trying to prepare ourselves for what we hoped would be a steak, but both worried would be something worse. I nodded, and Jerry flung open the cooler. Jesus! I had never heard Jerry yell, and that really shook me up. I braced myself for what I was going to see. When I looked down, nothing. The cooler was empty and clean. It still smelled fairly new, like it had hardly ever been used. Where the hell is that smell coming from then? Jerry, what's going on? Jerry, I'm freaking out. I could feel my eyes sting, not from the smell this time, but from the overwhelming feeling that I was about to cry. Jerry jumped to his feet and I did the same. I could tell he was getting scared and was showing it through anger. After a few choice words, he lost it. He flung the mattress off the bed and dismantled the top shelf on the closet. I backed toward the door to stay out of his way. This is ridiculous. Where is the smell coming from? In his fit of frustration, he flung the cooler out of the closet. That's when we saw it. A trap door in the floor under the cooler. I took a step towards the closet, but the look Jerry shot me screamed, "Stay back." So I froze. He crouched down slowly before looking back at me for reassurance. He tried to take a quick, calming breath before swinging open the trap door. As he did, so he let out a quick sigh. "What is it, Jer?" "There's a trunk under the floor. It's locked up tight. There's no way I can get this thing open." He slammed his hand on the lid of the trunk, defeated. "Yeah, there is. When I was cleaning, I found some old-looking keys hidden beneath the floorboards in my room." Before Jerry could say anything, I ran to my room, found the keys, and ran back. "Here you go," I smiled, trying to lighten the mood, knowing very well it wouldn't work. I handed him the keys and rushed backwards to the other side of the room. He took the keys and after a couple of tries was able to open the old lock. He turned back to me as a look of fear crossed his face. I nodded at him and he turned back to the trunk and lifted the lid. He violently gagged, almost falling forward into the trunk. I began to crawl towards him as his hand shot out at me. "Stay there, Alexis. Stay the hell away and call the cops." "Lex, you need to eat," Jerry said, kicking my leg under the table. I looked up from the runny eggs that I had been picking at. How could he expect me to eat? I rolled my eyes and went back to poking at my greasy breakfast. The last few hours had been a blur. I wasn't even sure how long it had been. After calling the police, everything began moving in slow motion. I stumbled to the living room and collapsed to the floor. The room felt like it was spinning. I could feel my cheeks burning as I struggled not to throw up. Jerry came running out and grabbed me off the floor. He was talking, but I didn't take in anything that he was saying. The police arrived after what seemed like forever, and we were escorted to the police station for a night of answering questions. There were a lot of implications made, but after a while the questions became less about the situation and more about how I was feeling. I imagine they felt sorry for me and concluded that I was just desperate to own my own home, and I was just innocent in this whole situation. I don't think they sympathized with me as much as just pitied me. I don't know how long we were there, but by the time we were leaving the station, the sun was coming back up. We wandered for a bit until we ended up here. I can't. I trailed off as I looked from my barely touched plate to view the outside. The sun was coming up, and there was a whole world outside. Unaware of what had just happened, I invited that world. I turned back to Jerry, who was content to scarf down his steak and eggs, both rare. How the hell can you eat at a time like this? What is wrong with you? Are you even human? For crying out loud, Jerry, did you not just witness the same thing I did? Did you not just find out that there was a dead body under the floorboards of what should have been your bedroom? Did you not just spend the night being questioned, without knowing the answers? These were all the things I was screaming at Jerry inside of my head, but on the outside, I remained silent. I didn't have the energy required to verbalize my emotions. I pushed my hash browns around my plate. I never finished my hash browns, but especially not this morning. I stared aimlessly at the soggy cubes of potatoes that was on my plate. I felt numb. This was too much, and I was too tired. But Jerry was right. I should eat. My body was drained. Jerry continued to eat, and I attempted to as we sat there in silence for what felt like an eternity. As we were finishing up, Jerry's dad arrived to pick us up. He paid our tab, and the three of us drove to Jerry's place. We couldn't go back to my house, and a hotel was a waste of money when his parents lived close enough for us to stay with them. His dad was just coming off a night shift and picked us up as soon as he finished work. Jerry and his dad made small talk in the front seat of the truck, while I fell half asleep in the back, my head bouncing off the window with every pothole the truck hit. Jerry's mom greeted us at the door. She was such a sweet lady. She tried to make conversation, but my mind was elsewhere. I slid into a pair of Jerry's sister's pajamas that she had left behind when she moved out. I sank into her bed. I slept with the window open, something I was too cautious about doing in my own home. I'm not sure if it was the fresh air, the fact that I felt untouchable here, or the fact that I was completely mentally and physically exhausted, but I actually slept. I woke up a few hours later feeling surprisingly well rested. I made my way down the stairs where Jerry and his parents were sitting around the kitchen table. I sat with them as Jerry's mom poured me a cup of tea. "So, you really think those old folks did all that?" Jerry's dad Sam huffed in his deep, permeating, tired voice. "Well, I never knew what they looked like, but when Lex saw them on TV, well, I trust Lex. Trust her with my life." Jerry nodded towards me as he said, "Poor choice of words was all I could think. Besides," he went on, "it's completely and totally possible. They had young family members. Who's to say the couple acted alone?" He sipped his coffee, satisfied with his explanation. Jerry was someone who always had a conspiracy theory for everything. Nothing was sacred as far as he was concerned. He was letting this murder thing go too easy for Jerry. But then again, maybe he does trust me that much. "What do you think about all this, Alexis?" Jerry's mom Marie piped up. "I think it's too early for any of this." The truth was I was dying to discuss this more, to have someone who would be blamed without a shadow of a doubt, someone who could be held responsible. Then there could be answers. I could feel safe and move on with my life. This was neither the time nor the place for serious talk. This was the kind of thing Jerry and I would discuss at length when we were bored and there was no one around to be offended or to judge us. We would watch cold case documentaries or do some of our own research and discuss. Trying to understand how and why these things happen was something that interested us both. Jerry's mom gently but firmly gripped my hand. "You're safe here and welcome to stay as long as you like." I half-heartedly smiled at her. I knew all of this already, and as sincere as it wasn't what I wanted to talk about. "I'm going to call work, Let them know I won't be in for the next couple of days. I turned to walk back upstairs. Marie called after me. I washed your clothes from last night. They are in the laundry room for whenever you want to take a shower. After calling work, reading some emails, and attempting to do some research online for anything related to what was happening, I decided a shower would help ease my mind. I headed down to the basement to get my clothes. Jerry's parents were both gone, his dad at work, and I could only assume which of his aunts his mom was off to visit. I wanted so badly just to sit and talk with Jerry, like normal, but things just felt off. I felt isolated. I rounded the corner to finish my descent into the basement, and I was hit with this deafening sound of an obvious struggle between a man and a woman. My heart began racing. What was I about to walk into? I softened my footsteps and peered around the corner and into the darkness. With my heart pounding in my ears and my throat going dry, I was able to make out Jerry, hunched over his desk, an old desktop computer illuminating his face. I took a deep breath to hide any trace that I had been spooked and made my way into where he was. To my surprise, I made him jump as I approached. He was rarely jumpy, so I assumed it was because of everything that had happened in the last 18 hours. "Make me crap my pants next time, why don't you?" He laughed, trying to play it off as being spooked. "You're one to talk. What are you even doing down here?" "I'm working on my film project. Remember that horror movie I've been working on forever?" He looked up at my puzzled face, and without being asked a thing, he continued. "Before the cops took us away to search the house, I grabbed my jump drive with my movie on it. This is the only actual computer in the house. I couldn't exactly sneak my laptop out without the cops seeing it. We weren't supposed to take anything out of the house, besides our phones and our wallets, which were all searched. I was always the voice of reason, and at times, I knew he resented me for it. I felt betrayed knowing he had done something he knew I wouldn't approve of. Something that could potentially come back to make us look bad. What was I supposed to do? Not work on the biggest project of my college career? This close to having it done? There's no harm in what I did. The cops are just full of it. I mean, we both agree neither of us did anything wrong, or were involved in any way, don't we?" His tone of voice had become serious and almost forceful. I knew Jerry hated cops, for no reason other than he felt he was a natural-born anarchist. But something seemed off. I assured myself that I was just on edge, that everything seemed off. I remained silent. It felt like the best way to avoid revealing any possible emotion in my voice. "Do you want to see this scene? It's not quite done, but I think you'll like it. It has some Halloween vibes to it. I know that's your favorite movie." Jerry was clearly proud of his work, so I attempted to enthusiastically agree to watch, despite not being in any state of mind to watch a horror movie right now. He hit play and backed away from the computer to give me a good view. I watched the outdated monitor attempt to play the HD video to the best of its ability. The scene opens up to a dimly lit cellar with brick walls and cement floor, a pile of damp cardboard boxes, and a deep freezer which is clearly out of commission. A girl enters, panting and half limping, holding her bleeding forearm. She shuns the door behind her and hastily heads toward the pile of boxes. Her gaze turns to the deep freezer. The camera zooms to her face as someone tries to get into the room. The clip then cuts to a view of the doors as we see the killer break into the doorframe. Letting himself into the room, he is wearing dark clothes and sporting a bandana across the bottom half of his face, and a mirrored sunglasses covering his eyes. He slowly stalks toward the boxes, stabbing his machete into the air where he assumes the victim will be. When he realizes she isn't there, he panics slightly before catching a glimpse of the deep freezer. The camera follows him to the freezer before switching to a view from inside the freezer. The girl is laid on her stomach with her hands covering her mouth. She screams as the lid of the freezer is flung open. Just as the lid is flung open in the movie, Jerry grabs me by the shoulders, causing me to violently jump in my seat. "God, Lex, calm down. You're fine. I'm not going to hurt you. You know I'd never do anything to hurt you," he says as he squeezes my shoulders. Jerry's words seem sincere but leave me feeling uncomfortable. I turn my head around to face him and force a half smile. "I'm going to go shower." Once in the bathroom, I turned on the water and sat on the floor of the shower, letting the water splash my back as I thought. This was not right. I couldn't place any blame on Jerry just because I was scared. I ran over everything in my head. I was never home in the daytime. I never knew where Jerry was or what he did. He knew about hunting season, the windows, and how to explain the smell. He never seemed too fazed by anything that was happening. He seemed more concerned about me worrying. He snuck something out of the house, right under the cops' noses. Speaking of which, he hates cops. The thing he snuck out was a slasher movie that he was making. I had no real proof that he did anything, though. But everything together, under the circumstances, just seemed to paint him in a bad light. I continued to let my mind drift when I heard a knock on the door. "Hey Lex, are you okay? You've been in there a long time. I'm sorry if I scared you. I get that you're on edge after everything that's happened in the last 24 hours, but you know I'm here for you." I could hear his head softly thump on the bathroom door as he rested his forehead against it. He waited for a response. I carefully jumped to my feet, wondering how long I must have been in there. Yeah, I'm fine, just trying to unwind. I'll be out soon." I waited to hear his muffled footsteps walking away from the door. I quickly washed my hair, while I convinced myself to act normal until I could be sure he did it. A few minutes later, I emerged from the bathroom to find Jerry sitting at the end of the hall. "What's up?" I kicked at his feet. He jumped. He had clearly dozed off in the short while it took me to finish showering and get dressed. He never slept at night, but he had this odd ability to doze off anywhere at any time. "Hey, you seem better now." He smiled as I sat on the floor facing him. "Yeah, I just needed a long hot shower to bring me back to reality. I just hope we can get home soon to get some more stuff. I'm stuck with this shirt, and it's not even my favorite." I forced a laugh. "Your parents don't mind us staying here until we can figure out what to do about the house, do they?" "Well, I assumed when the cops were done we could move back in," Jerry said, confused. "What do you mean?" "Well, it's not like the girl was murdered in our house. It's just where her body was found. It's fine." "What do you mean, Jerry? We have no idea where she was murdered." "It's obvious, though. I mean, why else would there be a cooler on wheels that had clearly been bleached and that was big enough to hide a girl's body in? Hidden in the closet? Covering her body?" Jerry shook his head, as if he had just said something as obvious as "the sky is blue." My heart began to race. Was it really that obvious what had happened? "Okay, so let's say you're right. What do we do about the guest room?" "I'll move in and finally have a bedroom." "Jerry, you are messed up. You're really okay with staying in the same room we found a body in." I gave him one of my most judgmental looks, and he laughed. "Come on, Lex. Let's just go watch some game shows or something." We headed down to the living room and watched TV. At first, my mind was busy putting together the rest of the pieces of the puzzle that Jerry had just given me. I tried my best to think, but it wasn't long before my mind was lulled away with the sound of The Price is Right. The next thing I knew, it had gotten dark outside, and over an hour had gone by. "Jerry, where are your parents?" "Dad's working overnight. He should be back tomorrow sometime. Mom's at her sister's, and she could be gone until midnight or later." He glanced at me and shrugged. "Want to go get some food? I'm starved. Dad took his truck, but Mom walked, so we can take her car." I nodded. I debated saying no, but either way I was alone with my best friend who, in my mind, I was piecing together to be a serial killer. We got in the car and drove into town to a Chinese place. After we finished, Jerry decided to have some ice cream from the park. To get to the little ice cream shop in the park, we had two options: drive around town or cut through a patch of woods where we were. Of course, Jerry wanted to cut through the woods. "Jerry, I'm not so sure how I feel about this. We were into the woods far enough now that neither the park nor the restaurant were in sight." "Don't worry, no one is going to hurt you." "How can you be so sure? There's possibly a murderer in town." "It's like I said earlier, no one is going to hurt you." "No, earlier you said that you weren't going to hurt me." "Whatever, Lex, don't be scared. You'll be fine. I promise." "That's because you know who did it, don't you?" Tears began to catch on my cheeks. I was terrified. Terrified enough to betray my best friend. "No, Alexis, I don't know who did it." His tone of voice hardly changed, and his pace remained the same. "Jerry, it was you, wasn't it?" I looked at the back of his head as he continued to walk in front of me, his pace still unchanged. "What makes you say that?" "Well, Jerry, you hate the cops. You're obsessed with murder and conspiracy. If anyone knew how to get away with the crime, it would be you. You knew that girl wasn't killed in the house. You seem to know exactly how her body got there. You illegally snuck a freaking slasher movie that you were making out of the house. You have no issues with staying in that damn house, and also, I never know what you really do when I'm at work. For all I know, you locked that girl in that trunk, locking it without knowing I had the key, thinking you could keep it hidden. You, above all people, would know how to, quote, find a crime scene to seem innocent. All of this combined, and you expect me to have your back unconditionally. I assume to be an alibi?" I stopped walking and started yelling. Jerry turned on his heels, grabbing my shoulders as he made eye contact, this time without the friendly smile. "Listen here, Lex. You have no idea what the hell you're talking about, okay? You're letting your mind run wild, and it's coming up with BS. Jerry, get your hands off me." "Lexi, no. Not until you say it wasn't me. You need to believe me." "You mean I need to have your back, right?" Jerry squeezed my shoulders even tighter. There was no way I could get away from him. "Jerry, you're hurting me." "Well," he said, gripping me so tightly I could feel his thick fingers pushing into my skin through my wool coat. "I guess I must have been lying about no one hurting you." He let go, pushing me away as he did so. I smacked him and screamed into the cold, dark night. This really ticked him off. He pushed me with purpose this time, sending me to the ground. I hit my back on a rock, causing me to gasp for air as the wind was knocked out of me. Jerry's eyes widened. He clearly didn't mean to hurt me as much as he did. He fell to his knees, then he tried to help me. "Get away from me, Jerry," I said through sobs of pain and fear. "I can't leave you now, Lex." He grabbed at me, roughly trying to pull me up. I struggled against him, reaching for anything I could use to protect myself. I grabbed a large rock from under me and hit him in the head, sending him to his back. He tried to get up, and I hit him again. Just hard enough to knock him out, but not hard enough to kill him. I checked his breathing. He was alive, but he would be out for a while. I took out my phone. It had been recording since we entered the woods, just as I planned. I caught myself explaining why Jerry was guilty. I caught him acting suspicious and attacking me. I called the number one of the cops had given me earlier and began talking before the officer could speak. It's Alexis. Jerry he's guilty. He did it. I have proof. We were in the woods between the park and the Chinese restaurant. Please, hurry." I managed to get out the words through my tears. I didn't want to be here anymore. After ending the call, I paused to text the audio recording to the officer so he could have my evidence. Then I took off running through the woods. I knew a path that would take me from where I was, through the woods back to my house. I ran as fast as I could. My house was in sight when I could faintly hear the cops' cars echoing in the distance. I found the spare key that I kept outside. I broke past the crime scene tape. I ran into my room. I lifted the floorboards, revealing the hidden space where I had found the trunk keys. As soon as I first found this spot, I decided to use it for myself. I reached inside the shallow hole and retrieved my spare car keys and my few wads of cash. I hastily threw my getaway items into my backpack with a couple articles of clothing. I left my room, ready to bolt for my car and get out of town, but decided to make a quick stop into the guest room first. I slowly cracked open the door and made my way to the open closet. Then to the hole in the floor. I kicked at the space where the floorboards should be. Next time, I said to myself, I'll find a better hiding place. So, have you ever misjudged someone? How many innocent people do you think are actually locked up right now? Or, how many guilty people have gotten away with murder? How many guilty people have gotten away with crimes? Where could they be right now? Could they be close to you? You could be watching TV with them right now. That's a good thought to think of as you are going to sleep tonight. So as always, good night, sleep tight. From the Scary Stories channel.